Ee, Değerli arkadaşlar, hoş geldiniz. Tekrar bugün bizim atölye çalışmalarımızın ikincisini, bu yaz atölyelerin ikincisini başlatıyoruz. Dün yine Muallem'le Orta Doğu müzikleriyle ilgili bir çalışmayı gerçekleştirdik. Dünya müziği başlığı altında daha çok tabii. Orta Doğu müziği onun çalışmaları ama dünya müziği başlığı altında bir çalışma gerçekleştirdik. Bugün de çok bizim için özel bir konu ve özel bir konukla devam ediyoruz. Gundula Gruen benim çok eski bir arkadaşım. Alman bir müzisyen, İngiltere'de yaşıyor, Londra'da yaşıyor. Ve özellikle bizim yolumuz Balkan müzikleriyle ilgili kesişti. Balkanlardaki müzik geleneklerinin çok önemli bir icracısı ve araştırmacısı aynı zamanda. Kendisi iyi bir keman icracısı, Balkan müzikleriyle ilgili oldukça tanınmış bir keman icracısı Avrupa sahnesinde ve dünya sahnesinde. Ama bunun dışında sonraki yıllarda etnomüzikoloji alanında da bir yüksek lisans tezi yaptı yine Londra'da ve bu manada bu müziklerin arka planındaki kültür boyutuyla alakalı da akademik çalışmalarına devam ediyor. Bizim hani müzik paylaşmamızın yanında onu dinlemekte her yönüyle hem kültürel altyapı hem de icra boyutuyla her zaman büyük keyif ve çok çok teşekkür ediyorum burada olduğu için. Şimdi İngilizce yürüteceği için workshop'ı ağırlıklı olarak ben onu da sizlerle şu an danışmak istiyorum. Hani biz çeviri yapmaya gayret edeceğiz. Ancak tabii bu biraz zaman olarak da uzun bir biraz daha uzun tutuyor zaman açısından. Bazıları için de tabii ki şey olacak çift defa böyle meseleyi dinlemek anlamında olacak ama herhalde genel için bir kolaylık sağlayacaksa Ezgi ve ben çeviri yapmak noktasında yardımcı olmaya çalışacağız. Bu noktada acaba fikrimiz nedir? Yoksa toplu çeviriler yaparız. Zaman zaman Gundula'yı durdurup bir özet belki yaparız. Daha hızlı da akabilir. Ama tabii burada genelin fikrine de uyarız değerli hocalarım, arkadaşlarım. Bu konuyla ilgili ne dersiniz? Önce fikrinizi alayım, sonra da Gundula'ya bırakayım.
Okay.
1 minute Gundula. Evet, Mustafa Kemal Hocam yine bir şey diyor ancak mikrofondaki dünkü galiba sıkıntı devam ediyor hocam. Eğer yazarsanız lütfederseniz çok memnun oluruz. Bunun dışında o zaman biz biraz çeviri desteği katmaya çalışalım. Belki biraz Gundula'yı çok da bölmeden belki biraz biriktirip toplu çeviririz. Bir şey yapmaya çalışırız olabildiğince. Mustafa Kemal Hocam'dan bir geldi. Peki toplu çeviri daha uygun. Evet hocam haklısınız, biz de öyle düşündük. Now, Gundula, I want to give the word.
Oh, that is Cenk gone.
It's.
Yes, I think he was just about to say he wants to give the word. So,
It's just a connection problem, most probably.
Yes,
it's the word is yours. Please, you can start.
Well, sometimes the internet can be unstable. I hope my internet stays stable, because if I suddenly drop off, then
then I also dropped and come back. It's normal. You can start if you want, and we try to translate your words. Please, it's your words now.
Yes, so I will just say one paragraph at a time, and then you can translate it if somebody needs a translation. Okay. Well, Cenk has introduced already me, and today we will talk about Hungarian Romani music. For me, that was the first Romani music I came across, because in Germany, where I'm from, when somebody talks about Gypsy music, then they only think of this Hungarian Gypsy music, because you can hear it in the restaurants, also in Austria. So, I did for a long time my research very informal. I heard a great song, met a person who played something, and I learned it. And for a long time, I didn't ask any academical questions. when I started about 10 years ago to ask myself these academic questions, I realized that in Hungary, I have a collection of two completely different Gypsy musics. So I want to say a quick word about my terminology. We say Romani people for the respect, but the term Gypsy music is still okay in ethnomusicology because it is just like how it was called for a long time. Anyway, so I just had these two completely different kinds of Gypsy Romani music in my collection. And so I asked myself, why can it be that in Hungary there are two completely different types of musics? That you know what I'm talking about, I will play you two samples. So now the first technical experiment for today. Let me try to share my, oh, where is my share screen?
Şu ana istersen Ezgi'cim kısa bir özet yap şu ana kadarki kısımda.
Evet.
Ne dersin?
Oh.
Okay, now I am there. So now I'm gonna play you a video. Oh, there's some sound problem. Maybe mute yourself right now. Or fine again, all fine again, all fine again. So now enjoy this bit of music. It's Charles Lindbergh, who is a Romani, who is a specialist in one type of the Hungarian Gypsy music. That was one of the types. Now, let me show you another type, completely different type of Romani music. Okay, so let me get me back. Okay, so you heard completely different. One is led by instruments, led specifically by the violin, and quite virtuosic, and has even some classical, Western classical elements. And the other one sounds very much like a folk, music, and is led by the vocals, and just a very, very different style. So in order to understand why there are two different styles, we need to go a little bit into history. I don't know if you know anything about, maybe I should make a stop here. Is some translation needed?
Yes. Yes. Ezgi had put some written notes on the chat screen, but I think we will need some verbal support too. So Ezgi'cim, you can take the word, I think.
İlk başta zaten 4 hafta sürecek bir atölye ve ilk bölümde özellikle Macaristan örneğiyle başladık ve burada iki farklı, zaten kayıtlarda dinledik, iki farklı tamamen çalgılar, enstrüman, vokal, icra teknikleri olarak birbirinden tamamen farklı iki örneği bize gösterdi. Bir tanesi daha çok halk müziği, halk kültürü temsil eden bir örnekti. Bir diğeri daha çok klasik enstrümanların kullanıldığı, klasik tarza yakın bir örnek gösterdi bize. Şu ana kadar kısaca özetleyecek olursak.
Ve şimdi de biraz
eklemek istediğiniz.
Ve şimdi de işin tarihine biraz bakmamız gerekiyor.
Evet.
Nasıl farklılıkları neden oluştu? Macaristan'la ilgili konuşuyor şu anda. Bunun biraz tarihsel sürecine bakacağız şimdi. Orada kaldık. Okay, Gundula, you can go on.
Yes. So I don't know if you have any idea about the history of Romani people. So I just give a very brief overview because it's quite important to understand. Romani people's identity and lifestyle is defined by their drom. Drom is the Romani word for road or for journey. And I think it's pretty much everywhere known that Romani people for a long time were nomads. Now they left, they are originally a nomadic tribe called Dom, who were based in Punjabi in Rajasthan in northern India, and around 1,500 years ago they left India. Nobody knows exactly why, but people assume there were some wars or political difficulties, and so those Romani people left, and they migrated everywhere into the world via Asia Minor, and so in the next few centuries, they basically spread out everywhere. Now, I have read that the first record of Romani people in Turkey was in the 7th century. And in Europe, they seems to have arrived, so Central Europe, in the 14th century. And in the beginning of the 15th century, there were the first groups of Romani in Hungary. Now, those Romani, they have gone through some assimilation processes, and some of them were self-inflicted because they just like found the settled lifestyle of Hungarian people safer and easier. But some of those inflictions were due to political reasons. For example, in the 18th century, Marie Therese and her son Joseph II, they established some policies that Romani people couldn't use their language anymore and were not allowed to wear their dresses anymore, just in order to force them more into Hungarian society, to integrate them more into Hungarian society. Those Romani people were later labeled Romungro, which means literally Roma, Hungarian man, and basically describes Romani who speak and live like Hungarian people. So that was one group. Now, in between the 15th and the 19th century, obviously many other Romani arrived in Europe, and many stayed in the Balkans, specifically in Romania, because there were lots of rich resources. Unfortunately, those staying in the Balkans and in Romania were made into slaves. And you all might have heard of Dracula, the Prince Vlad Dracul. He captured, for example, 12,000 Romani from Bulgaria and brought to Wallachia. And I mention this because Wallachia is an important place to work there as slaves. Now, this group of people were called, this group of Romani were called Vlach Gypsies or Vlach Romani because of their association to Wallachia. Now, in the middle of 19th century, slavery was abolished, and many of those Romani who were based in Wallachia as slaves fled Romania and also went to Hungary. Now, this second group of gypsies, called Vlach Gypsies, they were completely different because they still lived nomadic, they still lived with their old Romani law and lifestyle, and that explains why there's two completely different musics, gypsy musics and Romani musics in Hungary. Now, let's first look at the Romungro Romani music. This was the first audio example I played you from the video was basically played by Romungru Romani, and obviously back then, and nowadays these are still the group of people you saw. They are Romungru Romani. I all know them because they've played in London quite a lot. And yes, so in the 16th century.
Gundula, can you please write the right pronunciation for these groups on the chat screen? Huh?
Yes, that's a very good idea.
Yeah.
So Romungru Romani is
great.
Yeah.
Vlach Romani. Oh.
İki büyük Çingene grubu.
Evet, iki Vlah. Evet, ikincisi de.
Wow, evet. Very nice, Gundula. Thank you.
Yes. So Vlach, for example, in the Balkans, in Serbia, Macedonia, you call a Vlach, you call Vlaške. So I don't know if anything known about those groups, but they call them like Vlaške, which is the same as the Vlach Romani, just a different language. Yes, so now let's go back to the Romungru Romani and to their music. In the 16th century, there was the earliest mentioning in some records in Hungary about Romani musicians. And by the 17th century, they have gotten themselves a reputation of being outstanding musicians. Unfortunately, there's no records what kind of music they played before the 18th century. Just after 1715, it is known that they played a style called verbunk. Now, verbunk is originally a dance which was performed for males to join the army, like military, like a recruiting dance. And because it's quite interesting, I shall show you a little theater video of that type of dance and the music also. Oh, that was the wrong one. What do I need to share the screen again and go back to my. So I think we all have seen that type of dance. And this was supposed to recruit male to join the army. Now, the word Werbung comes from the German word Werbung, which means like advertisement and promotion. Now, this music was developed further by Romani people into an art music, which then was played for the high society. It was made more complicated with changing speeds, different rhythms, different sections. And yes, though it's not a Romani music by its roots, the Romungru Romani basically developed it into this art style, and they were the main performers for a very long time. The root of this music is Hungarian folk songs, mostly songs of farmers and shepherds from that time. And in the early 19th century, this music was then considered Hungarian, well, Hungarian folk music, Hungarian gypsy music. In this time, it was kind of one term. And in the first video, you have seen the band was led by a violinist. The very interesting thing is that the first famous solo violinist in this music was a woman, Panachinka, because like everybody knows that Romani is a male society, and I suppose neither in Turkey nor in the Balkans nor in Germany or Britain you do find any female Romani musicians who perform this music professionally. So it was quite interesting that Panachinka, who died in 1772, was the first female primash leading bands, and she also had a big role in developing the traditional Hungarian gypsy ensemble. So I have a couple of pictures for you of Panachinka, just to get a sort of idea. Yes, that's it. So here we have one where you can see her playing to some high society people, and you also can see her group behind her. Her husband also played in her group. He was the bass player. And then here we have another picture, which, well, shows her as a beautiful lady with a violin. And then one more, where you can see her perform. And again, you can see her band. You can already see a bass is involved, and then this instrument, a cymbalum, and some kind of wind instrument. And we talk about the instrumentation next. So yes, also in the 19th century, this typical Hungarian gypsy ensemble developed, and it has always a violin and was led by a violin. And then it has a brač, which is a 3-stringed type of viola. I'm going to show it to you in a second. Then it has a cymbalum, which is a little bit similar to your kanun, just bigger, like a little table with loads of strings, and you play it with hammers, and it has a bass. A little bit later, they had sometimes a second violin or a cello or even a clarinet joining. So as a brač, well, when I saw a brač for the first time, I was quite surprised because I never saw this instrument before. So let me show you a brač in action. Oh no, this was not what I want. I want this one, and here we have our brač player. Yes, and if anybody of you plays the violin, then you know that you can play chords with 2 strings, but with 3 strings you can't, well, only in very certain settings. And so they made the bridge flat, and you can just play this beautiful accompaniment. And I keep the screen shared because now I'm going to show you the cymbalum. Oh, if I find my mouse again. Yes, here it is. could listen to this for ages, but let's go back to our theory. Yes, so that's the cymbalum. And yes, you have seen it on the pictures already and in the first video I showed also. So that basically is all about the verbuncos style. Let's summarize the traditional elements. We have heard that it's not a traditional Romani music, but it was developed by the Romani to a very high level. And that's why it is considered as Romani music by basically everybody who doesn't look into it like an ethnomusicologist. And we have seen the virtuoso performance style, and there's also Romani influences because, you know, it's a very colorful music. It has a lot of improvisation elements. And there is another very special element, which is about the tonality. I don't know if this is known in Turkey, but in Western Europe, we call it the Gypsy scale. It developed in the 18th century, and it's basically like a harmonic minor scale, but with a raised fourth. I just will, for the people who do play music, this might be interesting. So if you have the harmonic minor scale, then this has this extra raised note. So it's quite an interesting scale. Yes, and obviously there were also a lot of composers of this type of music. The most famous one is János Bihari, who lived from 1764 till 1827. He was also a famous gypsy primas, so a violinist leading a band, and he composed about 18 verbuncos. Now, I couldn't find a nice recording where his music is played in a style where I would think the Romungru Romani traditionally played it. I just found one which is appropriate and which is played by an orchestra, so it sounds a lot more classical, but I think it still will be interesting to hear. So let me get back to share my screen. Oh, what is happening here? That is János Bihari. think that gives us a good idea. I just let it run on a little bit, that you can hear the different parts which come on. And there is a couple of more things to say about the performance practice of this music. For high society people, obviously, the music was played a lot more clean and a lot more sort of art, in an art style. When they play amongst themselves, then they do play a lot wilder. And one other thing which I forgot to mention before, which I find quite funny, is, I should stop this screen share. Yes, one other thing which I find quite funny, in the 18th, 19th century, it was fashionable for high society families to have their own personal, gypsy or a whole gypsy band in their household who basically played regularly for any of their parties or their dinners and stuff like that. Anyway, that is basically everything about the verbunkus music of the Romungro Romani people. Now, do we need any translation? And are there any questions?
I tried to write some points here, but I can add something about the history of this music if you let me.
Yes.
Epeyce şey oldu tabii, biraz yazarak takip etmek iyi olacak. Benim için de ilk tecrübe oldu. Çok birikince unutabiliyorum. Yazarak hani önemli noktaları vermeye çalışacağım sonrasında. Ama kısaca biraz tarihinden bahsetti. Romanların Avrupa'ya gidişleri 7. yüzyıl, 14, 15. yüzyılda kısa neler oldu? Önce işte göçebe bir yaşam tarzını benimsemeleri, 17. yüzyıla gelindiğinde de epeyce yasaklar, asimilasyona uğradıkları, dil ve giyimleriyle ilgili bir takım yasaklamalara maruz kaldıklarından söz ettikten sonra bir takım çalgılardaki teknikler, kullanılan diziler ve bunlardaki değişimler 17-18. yüzyıla doğru neler olduğuna ilişkin bazı örnekler gördük. Özellikle yüksek kesim, yani burada nedir? Buradaki yani zengin toplumun üst tabakasındaki kesimlerin diyelim, roman çalgıcı topluluğu, müzisyen topluluğunu evlerinde bulundurmalarının da özellikle 18. 19. yüzyıllara doğru önemli bir gelenek haline geldiğini de son olarak bahsetti. Burada az önce de bir önemli temsilcisinin işte 18. yüzyılda onun icra tekniğine ilişkin, onun getirdiği yeniliklerle ilgili bir örnek dinledik son olarak da. Şimdilik aklımda kalanlar bunlar. Şöyle yapalım, ben hani önemli noktaları mesaj kısmına yazayım, yoksa şey oluyor, ben de atlayabiliyorum. Şimdilik bunlar var. Sizin sormak istediğiniz varsa, sorularınız varsa onları alabileceğinizi söyledi. Buraya kadar var mı sorumuz? Yoksa devam edelim. It's okay. Thank you. You can go on to your speech.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I'm not professional musician, so excuse me if about my knowledge.
No worries.
But the song we listened, Janos Bihari, Verbunko, it reminded me of tango a little bit. Is there any connection with, especially the tango of the beginning of the century, of 20th century? Is there any connection with the music, the Verbunko to tango?
I don't think there is 100% direct connection, but I have listened to a lot of tango and I know exactly what you mean, because there's a lot of those tangos, especially those Russian tangos, which are very much led by the violin, and they sound very similar in style. And what I sometimes have heard, I've sometimes heard a Romani melody which I recognize, and I've heard it played by tango bands, just then with a tango rhythm underneath. So they don't play anymore the dum-jak, or similar appropriate rhythm and accompaniment, how you would hear it in Hungarian traditional music and traditional, Romani music of this verbuncos and rumungru style, but they just have put some tango rhythm underneath. So in this way, there is definitely a connection. If there's any deeper connection, I don't know, because I've not researched this one. But again, Romani people are music performers. So they play music everywhere. So it's very likely that in this way there is some kind of connection.
Sorunu tekrar Türkçe olarak sorabilir misin? Ben açıklamaları özet geçeyim.
Tabii.
Birazını.
Şeyi merak ettim. Janos Bihari'den dinlediğimiz Verbunco'yu 20. yüzyıl başındaki özellikle tango örnekleriyle, yani ezgi olarak biraz benzettim. Bir bağlantısı var mı? İkisi arasında bir ilişki var mı diye sormuştum.
Tango ile ilgili olarak doğrudan bu alanda bir araştırması olmadığını, ancak hani romanların zaten çok müzik yapma konusundaki hünerlerini ve hani böyle bir etkileşimin olabileceğini söyledi. Bergunco zaten iki tarzdan bahsetmişti ve Romungro tarzı dediği. Doğrudan bir araştırma olmamakla birlikte böyle bir etkileşimin olabileceğini kısacası söyledi diyelim. Başka sorunuz var mı? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Not right now, I suppose. At the end, when we do now the second part, we will have once more time for questions. Or if anything in between is not quite clear, then, just like give us a sign. Good. Okay, then we will move on and talk a little bit more about the Vlach Romani music. So we remember that those Romani were held as slaves in Romania until mid of 19th century, when they were freed and could escape Romania, and then many of them went to Hungary. And so suddenly you had a completely different group, and those people were until the 20th century still nomadic people. They were amateur musicians. They did not work as professional musicians, but they also didn't have other professions because they weren't trained like this. They were just like, slave workers. And for this reason, they were just like thoroughly poor. The music they played was only amongst themselves as social activity. Until the middle of the 20th century, this music was mostly vocal and accompanied only by body percussion, like finger snapping and clapping and some kind of banging stuff. And also they had a favorite instrument, which was a milk can. They had these like metal milk cans, which make a nice banging noise. And then also they liked to use bells. A very specific speciality of this music is what you call oral bass. Now the oral bass was mostly performed by one singer, mostly male, and it's sharp syllables or simple words which are sang or spoken as offbeat rhythms, as riffs in the middle of songs, and most of the time they have no pitch and they basically imitate percussion instruments. And let me give you a demonstration of this one. So no, I'm not going to give you the demonstration. I will play you again a video because that will, let me find my videos. usually in a traditional way, well, I should say in the old traditional way, it was not performed solo, it's as accompaniment. Like, you know, we have a little bit later some samples where you can hear how that oral bass accompanies the main vocals. We have heard that Romani people come from India, and we have heard that the Vlach gypsies have kept a lot more of their traditional lifestyle. And one Romani musician who also was quite knowledgeable and doing some kind of research, he mentioned to me that he thinks in the Vlach Romani music, you still do find some of the traces of the Indian origin. One of them he mentioned is the milk jug as an accompaniment. Like in this track we just heard, you could hear these banging noises, and this would be on one of their milk jugs. And he says these are possibly remains of an Indian percussion instrument called ghattam, which is also a jug but made from clay. Then the other thing is that oral bass. I don't know if you ever heard a tabla player practice, because they first need to practice all their rhythms as syllables. And it actually sounds very, very similar to that oral bass. And this Romani musician I talked to, he mentioned this could be some kind of remains from there. And another thing which sometimes sounds quite similar, if you have heard Rajasthani music, they use a lot of bells. It's also a vocal music with no accompaniment other than body percussion and bells. Another stylistic element of the Vlach music is that it's always in Romani language. They will not use Hungarian because, yes, they want to stick to their traditional form. And it's performed in a very spontaneous and improvisation manner. So a specific singer sings a very specific version of a song. He makes up different rhythmical and melodical variations quite spontaneously, and he also he makes up lyrics as he goes along. I remember at one point I wanted to find out some lyrics to a specific song, and so I basically found some contact and wrote to that person and said, could you please send me the lyrics to this song? Because I really like it, I would like to sing it. And he said back, I can't send you any lyrics because we just make them up, as we go along spontaneously. And I said, well, wouldn't it be possible to send me one spontaneous version? But it never came to this, unfortunately. But that's just like, well, sometimes it was confusing when I heard the same song performed from 3 different bands and quite different lyrics, and you think, which is right? But actually, all of them are right, because all of them are representing what this singer wants to sing at this specific moment. Yes, now, we mentioned also already that the performances were exclusively for other Romani people, and they performed for their own festivities like weddings and baptisms and birthdays and farewells. And very common were spontaneous parties when just some people met and started singing together and playing together and improvising together. So that is very much in contrast to the Romungru Romani musicians who played for the high society. I heard them playing amongst themselves too, but it is not known if they have some other type of personal Romani music which they perform amongst themselves. Nowadays, the Romungru Romani don't. The ones I have met, they don't. They play this music, which is very similar to the Verbunco style. Yes, so the Vlach Romani, they have mainly two different kinds of songs. One is the Loki Gili, like Gili means song in Romani language, the Loki Gili, which is the lyrical and slow song, and one is the Kilimanski Gili, which is a fast dancing song. So let's have a couple of musical samples again. This is a slow, unaccompanied song. So let me again, oh no, need to the other way, share the screen. Oh no, something wrong here. So I will actually fade it out here because it's not the sample I wanted to play. I aimed to play an unaccompanied song, which I have here. Yes. So, beautiful song. Obviously, those harmonies, this is not how it was performed in the olden days. That's already polished up for Western or non-Romani audiences to listen to. And yes, these are all bands. This one was a band called Kalyak, which means black fire, and they're quite a famous, Romani band. Vlach Romani band. They do perform the music as traditional as possible, and even though they've performed at many festivals, they try to stick to their roots. Anyway, so let's have a dance song. Also that we have the contrast, and my dance song, just that I play you the right one, this is another YouTube sample. So then let me share the screen again.
piaciume tanto asciutta. Che stava burro.
Yes. In this song, you can clearly hear that oral bass, this oral bass underneath, shouting all these doigo, up, up, up things underneath, and it's very much fun. So I also have an unaccompanied dance song for you to listen, because, well, it is a bit of a different experience. That is, okay, I need to share again, and then I need to go. Oh, for you. Here we go.
Aloma na na na na na na na. Aloma lo na na na na na na na na na na na na. Ay le le le le le aloma na na na na. Aloma lo na na na na na na na na. Aloma na na na na na na na na. Aloma lo na na na na na na na na na. Ay le le le le aloma na na na. Aloma lo na na na na.
Okay. So that was an unaccompanied dancing song, and again you could hear the milk jug drum very clearly. You could hear, in this case, a lot of oral bass. There were actually two male singers doing the oral bass, and it's quite fun. Yes, so until about 1960, the Vlach musicians, they basically had hardly any instruments in there. And only after that, they started to take the guitar as an accompanying instrument. And a little bit later, like in this one song, you heard a mandolin, they had other instruments. And until the end of the 20th century, they stayed being amateur musicians, just really making music for their own good and their own parties only. When at the end of the 20th century, this world music movement came in, and just world music became really, really popular, then some bands started to be professional bands, because suddenly they had professional performance opportunities. And those two bands we heard, the Romani Rota, which means the Romani Reel, and the Kalyak, the Black Fire, they both are amongst them. They toured Europe, they were in Britain also performing. I don't know if they were in Turkey performing, but anyway, so from this time on, you do find some professional Vlach musicians also. Okay, so maybe if anybody has some questions, or we do a little translation. I only have a little bit going on about the very recent development, so we are basically nearly at the end of the Hungarian gypsy music for today, but I think it's a good point to check about translation if you need some.
Başka sorunuz var mı ya da çeviri ihtiyacınız var mı diye sordu. Ben artık yazılı olarak anlık takip etmeye çalıştım. Sanırım böyle ilerlersek daha rahat olacak, değil mi? Çünkü toplu olunca ben de çok uzun olduğu zaman atlayabiliyorum. Genel olarak çok özet bir biçimde toparlayacak olursak aslında bu Macaristan'daki roman müzikleri hakkında konuştuk. Burada iki farklı tarihsel olarak incelediğimizde iki farklı gruptan söz ettik. Birisi işte tarihsel olarak göçebe kırsal kesimdeki grupları temsil ediyor. Birisi daha yüksek, toplumun yüksek kesimindeki grupların müziği. Ve ikisi birbirinden tarz olarak farklı. Başlangıçta da bahsettiğimiz gibi. Bunlar üzerine özellikle Vlah Romani diye bahsettiği buradaki son dinlediğimiz örnekler de bunun örnekleriydi. Burada oral bass diye bir şeyden söz etti. Vücuda vurarak işte bir takım parmakları kullanarak yaptıkları ve genellikle erkek icracılar tarafından kullanılan bir tarzdan söz etti ve iki tür vardı. Bir dans şarkıları olan daha hareketli, ritmik, eğlenceli olan türler, bir diğeri de daha lirik olan türlerdi. Bunlara ilişkin örnekler dinledik. 19. yüzyılın sonuna kadar bu böyle devam etti, ortalarına kadar diyelim. Daha amatör düzeyde olduğunu, ancak artık 19. yüzyılın sonundan itibaren bir dünya müziği denilen bir kavramla birlikte daha popüler hale geldiğini ve bu müzisyenlerin de daha profesyonel müzik toplulukları haline gelerek tanınır olmaya başladıklarından söz etti genel olarak toparlarsak. Sormak istediğiniz herhangi bir şey varsa şu anda yöneltebiliriz kendisine. Ve bu arada Macaristan örneğini de bugün böylece sonlandıracağız. Sonraki günlerde farklı bölgelere odaklanacağız.
Great, thank you. You have another question?
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes, go for it.
Me again. I was curious if the oral bass now today women also sing it.
On all bands which I saw live and which I met, and also in my collection of music, I actually did not hear any women doing it. I think it's in the olden days, it was really mostly men singing, and men singing the lead and men singing the oral bass too. And a little bit later, women also started singing, but I only heard them sing basically the main melodies, the main tunes or harmony lines.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bu oral bass dediğimiz tarzı sadece erkek müzisyenler mi icra ediyor sorusu vardı. Ve burada karşılaştığı bütün topluluklar, kendi arşivinde olan bu türe ilişkin tüm karşılaştığı örnekleri erkek müzisyenlerin icra ettiğini ve onlara özgü artık bir tarz olduğunu burada söyledi. Bir sorumuz mu var mesajlarda, ona bakıyorum.
Evet, Özlem'in bir sorusu var. Gittikleri yerlerde olacak Ezgi'cim başı.
Gittikleri yerlerde.
Gittikleri
Evet.
yerlerdeki topluluklarla
Yanlış.
şeyden mi bahsediyoruz? Vlah romanlarından mı söz ediyoruz?
Evet. Bu Macaristan'a gitmişler ya, önce köle olarak, sonra işte orada Macaristan'da işte yüksek kesimlerde bir roman müzisyen bulunduruluyormuş ama acaba bu Macaristan'daki diğer topluluklarla bir etkileşim oldu mu? Onlarla diyaloğa girmişler mi? Onu merak ettim.
Tamam. We have another questions about Vlah romance. When they go to the Europe, has any influences of the other communities, groups, or societies, and did they any impacts on how can I ask that? Vlah romance has any influences of other societies where they go?
Okay, so you mean the Romani people when when they travel, when they migrate and settle down somewhere, if they have an influence on the societies where they settle down?
Yes.
Yes. So, well, of the Romungru Romani, we heard already that they basically created this style and very strongly influenced this verbunkos style. And this was then accepted as a Hungarian type of folk music. So they had a huge influence on the Hungarian folk music. The Vlach Romani, I don't think they had that much influence. It's I tried to keep here to mostly the musical issues, and I didn't talk too much about discrimination and marginalization and stuff like that. But we also heard, because it was important for the music, that the Romungru Romani very early already gave up a lot of their own traditions and lifestyle and integrated into Hungarian society. And later they were forcefully even more integrated. So they basically lived like Hungarians, and they have a pretty high reputation. They are pretty much like other Hungarians accepted. The Vlach Romani, they come to a country, they are behaving very strangely, very weirdly. They having very strange clothes and are in little groups talking their own language, not mixing with other people. So they are not very much accepted in society. So people would not take any influence from them. So I think they are not really influencing local communities because there's too much discrimination in between them. And well, we talk about Romanian Romani music next time, but in Romania I've seen it very strongly that there's still obviously also Vlach Romani, and they're really quite interesting. Like when you come to a square in a town and you find here that little group of Romani people and really dressed very colorful, looking amazing, but being completely separated. And Romanian people just like really looking at them with very, dark, scary looks. So it's not a nice feel between them. Yes, so I don't think the Vlach Romani had a lot of influence on the societies and on the regions, on the populations where they moved to.
Şöyle ki şimdi onların orada yaşadıkları ayrımcılık, yani orada çok fazla dışlandıkları, toplumun dışında itildikleri ve çok farklı karşılandıklarından çok fazla detaylı söz etmedik ama diyor burada genel olarak romanlar gittikleri zaman işte bir asimilasyona uğruyorlar. Hani toplum genelinde bir baskıya uğrayıp birçoğu işte onların baskıları altında asimilasyona uğramakla birlikte bunlar romanları dediğimiz bu kesim daha hani marjinal olarak kalmış ve dolayısıyla diğerlerine çok fazla kaynaşmamış, yani aslında şey diyebiliriz, diğerleri içerisinde asimile olmayıp kendi tarzlarını koruyabilen bir ayrıcalıklı küçük bir grup olarak görebiliriz bunları. Dolayısıyla çok fazla etkilediklerini zannetmiyorum diyor. Daha çok özellikle Romanya örneğini daha sonra konuşacağız ama Romanya'da özellikle giyim tarzlarıyla rengarenk, çok mükemmel, yani çok ilginç giyimleriyle çok dikkat çekiyorlar ve kesinlikle diğerleri tarafından çok farklı görülüyorlar. Yani aslında kimliklerini korumuşlar gibi algıladım ben bu anlatılanlardan. Dolayısıyla biraz kendi tarzlarını müzikle de korumuşlar burada. Çok fazla etkilenmemişler cevabımız kısacası.
Yes. Maybe one other thing. Okay. Yes, maybe one other thing which is interesting to mention, I did not include it here because it's not really about Gypsy Romani music, but it's about the influence into other societies. I think it is pretty widely known, actually, that certain Gypsy Romani music has influenced Western classical music. It's with Bartók and Kodály, those more modern composers. It's obviously very well known, but already Franz Liszt, the pianist, he was influenced by this Hungarian type of gypsy music, which was this Romungru music. but also Mozart and Haydn. And if you look at the dates, like, Panachinka and János Bihari, they lived, end of 18th century. So yes, there were already influences on Haydn and Mozart from those composers. To analyze this one properly is a huge, big other lecture, and I only know the basics anyway. I haven't researched that in detail because I'm more interested in the actual, Gypsy Romani music. Yes, so.
Liszt'i de söyledi. Franz Liszt özellikle piyanist, Franz Liszt piyanist ve besteci. Yoğun Çingene müziklerinden etkilenmiş. Özellikle bu Romungro Romanilerinin müziğinden etkilenmiş diye Liszt'i söyledi, Franz Liszt.
Neydi? Az önce bir örneğini dinlediğimiz besteci vardı. İsmini bir an için unuttum. Yukarıda söz ettiğimiz özellikle ondan bahsetti. Batı klasik müziğine olan etkilerden.
János Bihari olabilir
Evet,
mi?
evet.
Evet.
Yukarıda yazmıştık.
Okay, so then I have only a little bit more to add at the end, which comes now back to the verbunkos, because in 1970, so pretty recent, in Hungary, you had this huge folk music revival. This was mostly by Hungarian people, but again, the Romani people were involved, and they created this kind of social event, which they call tanchas, which is basically translated as dance house, where you have musicians coming together, and again, often the musicians are Romani musicians, or you find mixed bands, and the music they play is verbunkos music or an update, a more modern update of this verbunkos music. And so first I would like to play you something of a band from Transylvania. Yes, Transylvania is in Romania, but there is a huge Hungarian population in Transylvania, and those Hungarians, they are much more Hungarians than Romanians, and they live completely in Hungarian tradition and lifestyle, and also continue to play the music from Hungary. And this band, Shashchavash, is a Romani band from there. And I have another little video, which is like very much fun. Now first I need to do my screen sharing again.
1970'lerde özellikle dans salonlarında pek çok müzisyen grubunun bir araya geldiği ve verbunko müziğinin bir çeşit güncellenmiş şekliyle icra edildiğinden söz ediyor ve bununla ilgili bir örneğimiz var sanırım.
Yes, thank you. Good. So here, let's... So, yes, I think you still could recognize some similarities to the previous played Verbunco's style. And also what is maybe quite interesting in this video is you can see some dancing. And what is the man dancing? Still quite similar to the military Verbunk dance, the military recruitment dance, you know, with all this slapping. And then part of the dance movement also, the woman is doing a lot of these ones, which is like, you know, you can't obviously hear the snapping, but that's what they do. So it still comes from the, yeah, from the Romani percussion style. And then to round up, I want to play you some video because, well, nowadays many things are mixed up, many fusions, and whilst Romani and Vlach Romani were usually not friends, in the modern movements, sometimes it is happening that they play together. And so here, there is this music which is really a mixture of both styles. Okay, so I need to share again. And oh, I lost the link. I need to get the link again. That is this one. Can I? Oh, we need some tone also. Okay, so I found this video very interesting. That's why I played it at the end, because first you could see the Hungarians, the ladies with the headscarves and the really colorful things were the Romani ladies, and the ones with the more sort of folky skirts, they were the Hungarians. And the men with the waistcoat, like often you can see that on the dark looks as well, are the Romani men, and then the one with model suits, they are the Hungarian men. And this band, at the beginning, they played the verbunco style, like led by Samvalen, but they mixed the oral bass in, and you could see the milk jug drum being played. So that is basically a fusion, you know, of everything. And well, the piece they played now last was basically again a Vlach, you know, piece. Yes. So anyway, that summarizes all I basically want to share with you today. And I hope you find it interesting and enjoyed it. And questions, please.
Thank you. Bu son videoda özellikle bugün anlatmak istediğim her şeyi aslında bir arada gördüğünüz ilginç bir örnekti diyor. Yani burada milkshake tam terimi söyleyemiyorum ama hani burada çaldıkları ellerinde bir ritim çaldıkları alet. Hem Macarların hem bu romanların bir arada olması, giydikleri kıyafetler, işte renkli kostümler, aynı zamanda birkaç tane stilden söz etmiştik. Bu oral bass'tan söz ettik, işte yani oradaki müzik tarzlarından söz ettik. Aslında hepsinin bir harmanlanması gibi, hepsini özetleyen bir örnekti, son örnek dedi. Umarım keyifle dinlemişsinizdir. Şimdi sorularınız varsa onları alabilirim dedi son olarak da. Varsa sorularımız. Buyurun.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you have another question?
Yes.
Go for it. Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if you know about the people in Turkey, the Romani people in Turkey, and which kind of music and their story, and which group they belong to.
And which group I wouldn't know. They will obviously be neither Romungru nor Vlach gypsies. You have a lot of different gypsy tribes. In the early days, they were often named by their profession, because some of them basically, you know, were blacksmiths, some of them were silversmiths, some of them, you know, they did a lot of mechanical, they have a lot of mechanical professions. And some of them are named by where they went to. But it's pretty complicated, and there is, I haven't found a piece of literature which really describes clearly, those Romani are called like this, and those Romani are called like this. And I suppose one of the problems are, they all left from India and ended up somewhere. Romani people themselves are not scholars. They, well, nowadays the old people still might not be able to read and write. And they just have a completely different way of thinking. For example, at one point, when I chatted with some Romani from Czech Republic, they said, well, our parents tell us, you know, the people who need to write down everything are stupid because they can't remember things. And then they say stuff like, yes, how do you know it's true what is written in the books? So they have a very different conception of how to, you know, of what education means and stuff like that. But coming down to it, nobody was ever writing down the history. I only, there's only nowadays a few people, and let's say nowadays in the last 10, 15 years, who have started writing down the history. All the history which I have been mentioning today has been put together by going through the archives, and okay, then and then some nomadic people appeared, and because they were quite different, there were, you know, there was a record made by the government at that time. And later, you know, when some people researched that, they thought this must have been the Romani people because it fits together with everything else they heard. But Romani people themselves did never really do any research. And so, yes, back to Turkish Romani, I have seen many play music, and yes, obviously some of the music is different, some of the music is quite similar. And what I found interesting of Romani in Turkey is that one of my research subject for my master dissertation was Macedonian Romani music. And Macedonian Romani people, they are also Muslim, and they are very connected to Turkish Romani, and they play the old ones who still have, a very, when I say now, very high music education, mean they really studied the music thoroughly from their parents, grandparents, and so on. And the style is very similar to what I have heard and experienced of Turkish Romani music, but I couldn't tell you anything about which tribe they belong to and stuff like that.
Thank you. Türkiye'deki romanlar hakkında ne söyleyebilirsinizdi soru. Onlarla bir benzerlikleri, bağlantıları var mı köken olarak gibi bir soruydu. Özetle şöyle söyleyebiliriz. Hepsi evet Hindistan'dan geldikten sonra dünyanın çeşitli bölgelerine dağıldılar zaman içerisinde. Zaten göçebe bir yaşam sürdükleri için tarihi kayıtlara çok fazla ulaşmak, şuradan geldi diye kökeni net bir şekilde söylemek çok mümkün değil. Hani kendilerine sorduğunuz zaman size verdikleri yanıtlarda onlar işte annelerinin, babalarının hatırladıkları hafızaya dayalı şeyler. O yüzden net şeyler söyleyemeyizdi. Türkiye'dekiler de daha çok kendi çalışması yüksek lisans tezini Makedonya'da yaptı. Dolayısıyla buradaki örneklerle, orada da Müslüman Türklerin yaşadığı bir coğrafya biliyorsunuz. Oradakilerle Türkiye'deki tarzlar arasında bir benzerlik, yani benzer tarzlar da var, farklıları da var ama Türkiye'dekilerle onların benzer olduğunu, yani benzer örneklere rastladığını söyledi bize. Özetle böyle. Var mı başka sorumuz?
Yes. So I think in the next week I will talk about Romania. The week after I will talk about former Yugoslavian Romani music and also involve the Macedonian one. And obviously I never have researched Turkish Romani music, but I will talk about the influences of the Turkish Romani music into the Macedonian Romani music. So this might be then interesting and answer a bit more, of your questions.
Thank you. Önümüzdeki hafta Romanya ve daha sonraki haftalarda Makedonya, Yugoslavya'daki Çingene müzikleri hakkında konuşacağız. Belki daha sonrasında Makedonya, Türkiye arasındaki etkileşim üzerine. Ben de oradan Türkiye'de çalışmadım ancak Makedonya ile Türkiye'deki Çingene müzikleri üzerine etkileşimi de burada tartışabiliriz. O da sorunuzu birazcık daha ayrıntılı yanıt bulabilir şeklinde bir açıklama yaptı bize. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Başka sorumuz var mı?
No other questions?
No other questions.
Thank you very much, Gundula.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you for listening and for being interested. I think what I should have done better is I should have kept shorter paragraphs and then ask you to translate. I got carried away talking, but you were very good in making your notes and translating it. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. It was very useful and enjoyable for us. And it's okay. I can write at the same time. We can solve it.
Yeah, but it's for the flow of things better that when there is many music samples played, then it's better to know very soon afterwards what I have been talking about. Well, it's the first time I did it in this way, and so next time I try to improve this a little bit, and I hope.
Hi, Gudrun.
Hi, good to see you.
What a nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Hi.
We should have a time change, I think, for the next week because Gundula has an activity at the same time at 9 p.m. in Turkish time, if I'm not wrong. So maybe we can try to take it a little bit earlier. değerli dostlar, belki haftaya biraz daha erken toplanmamız gerekebilecek. Zira Gundula'nın bu saatlerde bir programı varmış sanırım. Biraz o 7 ve 9 kendi içinde karışmış gibi gözüküyor. Dolayısıyla bu hafta onu organize etti ama gelecek hafta için bir kendisine sormamız gerekiyor. Gundula, the next week's time, it should be 7 p.m. something like, or
You mean
what do you
7
think?
p.m. Turkish time?
Yes, Turkish time.
Yes. You know, it's like I checked my diary. I can change it and do it the same time if it's better for you. I think like my student who should be at this time can be changed. So if it is better and if more people would be free to participate.
Next week, in fact, we have other activity starting at 9 p.m. again.
Okay, I see.
So for the next week, it is 7 p.m. shall be better
Okay,
from
yeah,
our case too. But let's ask if it is suitable for everyone. Değerli arkadaşlarım, haftaya saat biraz daha erken bağlanma ihtimalimiz olabilir mi? Yani 7'de. Hem Gundula'nın programı hem de bizim 9'da başka bir etkinliğimiz olduğundan dolayı ona da katılmak isteyenler belki olabilir. Dolayısıyla gelecek hafta için 7 herkes için uygun mudur? Akşam 19 yani. Evet. Tamam. Genel anlamıyla uygun.
Evet.
Ayten Hocam uygun olur mu?
Uygun. Evet.
Tamam hocam. Tamam
Yani
hocam.
uygun olacağımı umuyorum. Tabii Maraş'ta olacağım. Maraş'ın koşulları
Evet hocam.
neyi
Evet hocam.
neyi
Doğru.
gerektirecek? Eğer
Doğru.
bir aksilik olmazsa otelimde yani olur diye düşünüyorum.
Tamam hocam.
Katılabilirim
Tamam hocam.
diye düşünüyorum.
Tamamdır hocam.
Herhangi bir aksilik olmazsa.
Tamamdır hocam. O zaman gelecek hafta 7. Gundula, next week 7 p.m. Turkish time.
7 p.m. Turkish time. Yes.
Okay.
Mustafa Kemal Bey erken biraz önce ayrılmak zorunda kaldı da ona nasıl haber verebilirsiniz?
Ona gelecek hafta toplantı saatini yine maille zaten aktaracağız. Sadece biraz daha erken hani olduğunu ona ileteceğiz. Mahmut normal zaten şeyleri gönderiyor ya, mailleri. O şekilde artık haberleşeceğiz yani. Ezgi'cim çok teşekkür ediyoruz sana da.
Rica ederim.
Çok teşekkürler Ezgi.
Rica ederim.
Thank you very much Gundula.
Thank
Teşekkür
you.
ederim Ezgi çevirim için.
Thank you.
Teşekkür ederim hepinize. Thank you.
Çok teşekkürler katıldığınız için. Çok sağ olun.
Well, iyi akşamlar.
İyi
İyi
akşamlar.
akşamlar Gundula. İyi akşamlar Gundula.
See you next week. I forgot how to say it in Turkish.
Görüşmek üzere. Haftaya görüşürüz.
Görüşürüz. Görüşürüz. Exactly.
Görüşürüz.
Bye
İyi
bye.
akşamlar herkese. Hoşçakalın.
Hoşça kal.
İyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar.
İyi akşamlar.
Bye bye.
İyi akşamlar.